You're Com Games champion, how does that feel?
I mean, it was hard enough to get here. I mean, it was harder than qualifying for the Olympics. I was sat down and told that I should consider taking up another event other than 100 metres just because it's too deep. According to my graphs, I would never make it.
As a New Zealander and a fake Australian, the Commonwealth Games 100 metre finals were like Christmas morning. NZ gold and an Aussie silver, plus a bronze, was not at all what I was expecting to find under the tree. And in the men's especially, the large majority expected Nigeria's Canyon Sola Ajayi to dominate, who up to today had been a tyrant on the world scene, taking Oblique Seville, the reigning world champion, to the cleaners back-to-back at 21 years old. Simply put, this was his championship to lose. And Ajayi outright exploded to the front, but at 50 metres, he'd be met by Australia's Lachlan Kennedy to his left with an incredible drive. Australians were already celebrating their gold medal. Just for Cameroon's Emmanuel Eseme to open his stride,
gonna take it or does he know? Coming through there Eseme for Cameroon!
And devour the both of them in the final 20 metres. And you can't hate that at all. And while most people would call this a choke on the behalf of Ajayi, I wouldn't agree. This man has been running full throttle all year, starting with indoor NCAAs in January to beating on pros as of last week, while every other professional could leisurely start their season 4 months after him. Time and time again, I said it. We've seen this happen before with NCAA stars. In a breakout year like this, the wheels have to fall off at some point, and today happened to be that day. And even then, only slightly. Something that needs to be brought up is the conditions. It was 17 to 18 degrees Celsius, and what the camera doesn't show from the top view is it's pouring down, and the track is absolutely soaked. Theoretically, if Ajayi had won this race in 9.90 seconds, no one would think any less of him and would be continuing to celebrate. But out of nowhere, he got beat fair and square by two athletes at that. Emmanuel Eseme, 9:83, a national record, personal best, and the third fastest African time ever, actually overtaking Ajayi, at get this, age 32. And Lachlan Kennedy, 9:85, national record, oceanic record, and the highly esteemed white guy world record. Now, as a bit of a small gloat-worthy celebration, I prophesized a time like this way back in April with my all-seeing eye. But still, the medal win was so out of pocket, only Aaron Brown pretending to not hate Australians for the day could have guessed this.
But he's a game-time performer. I'm expecting Lachlan Kennedy, if not to beat Ajayi, to at least put up a decent fight.
But all that nonsense aside, the implications now that Eseme and Kennedy have run this fast today are absolutely huge. You do always have to take official splits with a grain of salt, but Kennedy and Ajayi coming through 60 metres in sub 6.4, who are both 22 years old or younger, and Eseme closing similar to a prime Noah Lyles with a 3:39 final 40 metres, is incredible on a good day, let alone a cold rainy night in Glasgow. And to be honest, I didn't even need to bring up the splits because I've yapped about this before. Rainy times like this have an unbelievably strong correlation to incredibly fast times in normal conditions. Asafa Powell, 2005, ran the then dubbed world record in the rain, a 9:85 in even colder conditions than Glasgow, but less wet. The next week he ran 9:77. 2009, Bolt ran a rainy 9:79 into a headwind in Paris. 1 month before, a wee 9:58. And last year, Oblique Seville went 9:87 in some of the worst conditions we've ever seen a professional 100 metre race in, and then exactly a month later, he goes 9:77 for a world championship title. And there are more examples than this. So as ridiculous as this sounds, and I hope you're sitting down for this one, to say Eseme and Kennedy are possible high 9.7 guys might be a serious reality with their current form alone. Imagine saying that last week. But if we do the normal fraud checks, they legitimately beat Ajayi, who has been whipping all year, and they came from behind at that. It's in a half stadium with walls at their back, unlike the Texas Open stadiums, and they were the only athletes to PB this race. These aren't fake Australian times anymore. The only real counter-argument to all this crazy talk is this track has been recently resurfaced, so it is quick. And as loosely mentioned, it is a semi-open stadium similar to Hayward Field, which if we do start talking like it's Hayward Field, at worst, the heavy rain cancels out the fast track effect, meaning 9.8 is very, very real, and these guys are going to be a serious threat from now on. And at best, they're about to belt ass at World Ultimates this year.
Eseme's going to take this one. Eseme from the...
but I don't know if I can believe all that. And in my opinion, even after what I've said and what this race implies, I don't really see either of them cracking into 9.7 anytime soon. I don't want to be a non-believer, but it can't just be that easy, right? So while I really do believe 9.8 wasn't a fluke, I do think doing it in these conditions was a bit of magic, whether it be the moment or the track. And now for the New Zealand half of me, there was the magical gold that Zoe Hobbs brought home. Truthfully, this was a relatively simple race. Hobbs exploded out on the field and just simply never looked back.
Race now, barely anything to choose between the athletes. It's so close on the line. I think it was Zoe Hobbs.
Taking a clean win in a tough field of women who, heading in, 5 had ran significantly faster than her this year. And whether it was the lane, time, or pedigree, she was an outright underdog heading in. So with that said, in her biggest career win, a serious major medal, and her immediate reaction is like she's overcome a system that set her up to fail.
To come away with the gold.
I still just think back to little Zoe and she'd be in disbelief, honestly. I was sat down and told that I should consider taking up another event. According to my graphs, I would never make it, and here we are, winning a gold medal. So
Proud of you.
Yeah, thank you.
Now this is where things get a little weird, rambly, and maybe even serious. From a casual viewing perspective, especially if you're from Oz or NZ, these were electric races filled with pride. But to me they were a little deeper than that. They were an ode to never giving up. The white man world record has been a running gag on the channel and has slowly eked its way into unironic posts on Reddit. But the reason it's stuck is because the stereotype of white men are slow is relatively true. Before this year, there were 2 athletes of non-African descent in the top 100-meter sprinters of all time. As of this year, there are now 3, and Kennedy has pushed that boundary into new territory and he's now ranked the 31st fastest man in history. And as jokey as it all sounds, this will undoubtedly fuel the fire for more fast white sprinters, just like Sue did for Asians and Sabine or Tobago are doing for Africans, which, funnily enough, Emmanuel Eseme talked about himself in this article. And I say it's funny because he's older than both of them. But in Eseme's own right, he's pushing the boundary for athletes who start late, because believe it or not, Eseme took up sprinting when he was 24 years old, making a late and extremely bold switch from football where he was a goalkeeper of all positions. But sometimes it's not stereotypes or an unconventional late start, it's the system. New Zealand is often celebrated as a great athletic nation, winning medals at global championships with a small population and so few athletes sent. But it's all by design. These were the qualification standards set in place for New Zealand athletes to go to the Commonwealth Games. And in comparison, here are the standards set for athletes to qualify for a significantly harder and more distinguished competition, the 2025 World Athletics Championship. Immediately notice how the A qualifying standard, which is the only mark that ensures you will qualify, is harder in 5 of the 6 sprint events than the World Championship. And this B standard means you get to go if Athletics NZ thinks you passed the vibe check. And now if you're sitting there and asking why is such a high qualifying standard an issue, it's because all it does is squander talent. Back in 2021, New Zealand's 2 fastest sprinters, Eddie Nketiah and Zoe Hobbs, were snubbed from the Olympic Games selection, even though they had both qualified through world rankings and received invitations. Our country is 5 million big and we're declining Olympic invites. And a moment like this for a young athlete is a pretty big fork in the path of whether they continue their sport or not. And while Hobbs continued to fight for spots on Team NZ, in the other case, Eddie, after one more snubbing to the 2022 Commonwealth Games, in which that same year he ran fast enough to get a silver medal, he'd leave the sport for a couple years, trying other things, and begin switching allegiance to Australia. And the end result was this year, after missing years of his career and development, Eddie would finally run for the green and gold and finish 6th in this Commonwealth Games final. Well yeah, Hobbs, forged under the pressure, would also run and win gold, but that's not really the point. Eddie was just happy to be here, running and netting a new PB, and to be honest, imagine if he hadn't lost 2 years of his career, he could also be a gold medal winner right now. While Hobbs was breaking down. Because besides the stress of fighting the committee every year for your spot, she actually qualified to this Com Games by the skin of her teeth. She only ran under the A standard once, and she didn't get another B standard. Without this single time she ran the middle of last year, let's just pretend she got a harsh headwind that race, she wouldn't be here accepting this gold medal today. And it makes me sick hearing this specifically.
I was sat down and told that I should consider taking up another event. According to my graphs, I would never make it. And
You'd think maybe these were harsh words from a parent, friend, or coach even. No. This came from the higher ups at Athletics NZ because that's what they do. They put your performance on a theoretical, projectionary graph and tell you what your future is capable of. Can you imagine your own federation telling a young and up-and-coming sprinter, mathematically, you're not good enough, and to take a hike over some hurdles? Well, you don't have to, because this is the result. A gold medal, no celebration, just frustration. And for reference, if New Zealand could choose who would qualify to the Com Games entirely, based off season bests, the semi-finalists marked in red wouldn't have made it to the Com Games. And that's just the tip of the iceberg, because if our medalists are struggling this hard, and we're sending possible finalists to different countries, imagine how anyone else who's just outside that finals caliber gets treated. But that's enough of man gets angry at own country's decision, what's new. The races were cool, I hope Zoe Hobbs can enjoy her win, and Athletics New Zealand, please hire me. I have somewhat of an eye for talent.